All right, it is 5:30. I will call this policy committee meeting to order. Mrs. Shope, may I please have a roll call?
Yes. Megan Miller,
Present.
Craig Schneider,
Present.
Amy Levy.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you so much. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
So moved. No, second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes from the May 3rd policy meeting, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes unanimously. Oh, I skipped C, forgive me. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? There has been a request to move item 2K just before 2A, so we would start with that. So unless anyone objects to that change, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All right, there is a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes unanimously. We will start with 2K, policy 187. Let me scroll down. All right, so with this policy, there are three main things that we need to review. The first is who, so who is able to participate. The second question we need to answer is when are individuals able to participate, and then the other is for how long. So we'll take the concerns in that order. If you have any grammatical edits, please jump in when it's your turn to speak and just let us know, and we'll get those noted. So we'll start with the first paragraph that deals with who. Board Member Schneider, do you have any edits to the administration's proposal?
I do not.
Board Member Miller, same question.
So I think we should leave it intact. I think if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I guess I'd be curious of about hearing the perspective for why we want to change who can speak. Given that we're like kind of a public community entity that's interlaced with other communities, I'm fine with people coming to speak.
Okay. Before I give my commentary, Dr. Garrison, did you want to speak to or provide any context for the changes, the proposed changes?
One of the things I was just thinking about with the public comment pieces is that, typically, I shouldn't say typically, when we think about our public comments, I would like to know that there are people who we are, working with that's working in our city. Otherwise, I feel like it's open-ended and anyone from anywhere can come and say whatever they want to say about what we're doing here in our district, who may have, alternative motives and or just want to come and say what they want to say. Beloit to me is a special place, and especially our school district. And so when we're talking about matters of our school district, I think it's very important that the people who are here and are doing the work and working with our students and staff are also speaking on behalf of people who are here, that live in the community, work in the community, and also support our school district in various different ways. And so I can see the thought there, but I was also thinking about, again, anyone from anywhere can come and say what they want to say if we leave it open-ended.
Okay, thank you for providing that context. What I had in my notes are a couple things. One, I think that what I heard you say, the spirit of that is that you want people speaking who have a vested interest in our district. They don't have to agree with us, but they have a vested interest. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay, so in my notes, I had things about, one, if we make changes, I would be fine with students, parents/guardians, staff members, residents, or, and I'm not committed to the verbiage, people who work in the city of Beloit. Because you may have business owners or people who work in Beloit that have connection with our district, but they don't reside here. I thought about members of the clergy. We do have pastors in the city and other religious leaders who may not reside in the city, but have a vested interest in our school, our community, et cetera. So are we open to students, parents/guardians, staff members, residents of the city of Beloit, or individuals who work in the city of Beloit? Go ahead.
Oh, no, I think that's a wonderful addition because it does capture some of our conversations that I had, even today. I wasn't pretty sure how I would say it, but I think that's the best way to kind of think of it too, because I don't want to exclude, like, people who work here, in our community. And I think that's very important that we add their voices to the conversation.
All right. Board Member Miller, are you opposed to that? And it is slightly narrowing, but I think it still captures people who have a vested interest in our district and our community.
So I'm not interested in that language only because I don't think that communities operate in isolation from one another. So for example, let's say there were an issue in another district in the state, or maybe like across the border in Illinois, like dealing with an issue that was similar to something that we're dealing with here. And somebody wanted to come give a public comment and say, hey, we're concerned about like this because it has rippling effects, and here's how we were able to deal with this in our community or something. I just think that anytime we put up barriers and boundaries to community input or to public input into like how we operate public entities, it doesn't serve us well. In fact, one of the policies that we have up tonight is like collaboration with other school districts, for example. And in part of the language that we talked about last time for that had to do with like, just a minute, baby, just a minute. It yields greater impact or like positive outcomes for everybody when we collaborate. And I'm not saying like, I don't think it's going to be like an everyday instance that somebody from like, Sun Prairie is going to come down and say, hey, Beloit, like we've been watching some of your stuff and we want to offer some public comment on X, Y, or Z. However, why put up a barrier if it could possibly lead to like a better outcome, collaboration, or like illuminating an issue from a perspective we may not have heard from or considered?
I think you bring up a good point. I also think that they can just be added to the agenda. So it's not necessarily diminishing their voice. If we want to partner with anyone, you can just add them to the regular board agenda if the board so chooses.
Well, so like I'll give you another example for why I believe that's restrictive. We've had people reaching out to me from the community for months trying to get on committee agendas that have not been placed on committee agendas yet because there's other agenda work to be done. So again, I just don't see the wisdom or value of like putting up any restrictions. Like we're not like I would understand it if like at every meeting there were a line out the door of people from like, like Madison or from somewhere else that were like coming with issues that maybe weren't even relevant. I mean, but that's just not an issue we have. So like, again, if it's not a problem, why are we I just don't understand why we would put up a barrier when that barrier could prevent a possible gain, right, for the district. I just don't, I hear what you're saying and it's logical. I'm looking at it from a different perspective, and I just think the least restrictive input to our district is best.
Sure. I hear you saying barrier, and I think that's not the angle that we want, or that I'm speaking from. I just believe when it comes to issues of our school district, if there's things that people want to really say, they can also just reach out to you all. They can call board members. They can talk to you all. They can have a comment on the phone, or to me, it's not a barrier. This is more of an opportunity for us to kind of look at the issues that are concerning our district and having the people speak on that are Beloiters, and not just, again, anyone from any specific place or just because they want to come say anything about us or to us or in support of us even. And so I'm not against the thought of either way. I just think that we have to, again, have this conversation because, again, there's other ways that people can still have a comment with you and still get their voices clearly heard.
Okay. Thank you so much.
For sure. And, go ahead.
Oh. Did you have something else, Board Member Miller?
I did, but I was just going to say, like, we can agree to disagree on all of that. I like the idea of us not being restrictive just because like I appreciate the discussion and the opportunity to have it. We don't operate in isolation. So people who have like a vested interest in Beloit, it depends on what that interest is. I mean, there's not like a wall around communities. Like we all interact with each other. I feel like we all have kind of like, there's like a coexistence amongst school districts and communities in our area. So I just feel like it's an artificial boundary. But again, I can agree to disagree. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much. Board Member Schneider?
I can see both sides of this. I guess my question more was, do we have areas outside of the city boundaries that are part of the school district of Beloit?
I think there may be a couple spots that are grandfathered in to the
Okay.
district of Beloit that, yes, I believe so.
So I was wondering if we'd want to look at so that the residents of the school district of Beloit,
Okay,
or the school district boundaries, so that it incorporates those who may be outside of the city limits, but actually they're in the school district boundaries, because we're talking about the school district. And so I wonder if going to that wording might make sure that we don't exclude anybody who lives within the boundaries of the school district of Beloit.
okay. So this is what I'm going to do. I see both sides of this as well. I am comfortable with leaving it as is, but I will definitely pull this from the consent agenda when it goes for first reading. And I think it's important to lay out the points that we've just addressed and allow the full board to weigh in and make a decision on it. So this is a policy that I will intentionally pull. I will briefly recap our discussion on this, and we'll just let the full board decide the who question. When we go to when, so that starts the second paragraph at every.
Pardon the interruption. Can
Sure.
I get a point of clarification?
Absolutely.
Will I be making the changes that were discussed here tonight?
No, we'll leave it
Okay.
as it was, so it'll say for any individual to express.
Okay. Will I leave the green that's currently there?
Sure.
Okay.
So,
But
yeah,
not add anything else that was talked about?
I have the notes.
Okay.
I'll pull it
Okay.
and I'll provide context.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you so much for getting that
Sure.
clarification.
Just want to make sure I'm presenting what needs to be there.
Appreciate that. All right,
you.
no problem. When we go to the second paragraph, that kind of speaks to the when. So the beginning of that first sentence says, well, the proposed language is at the second regular and business meeting of the board. All right, so if we could pause and just agree, we call our meetings on the first and third Tuesday regular meetings. So is anyone opposed to dropping the and business? All right, so that's the first step. Now, the second one, at every or at the second. Board Member Miller, in the interest of time, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you are not comfortable with making that proposed change. All right, I'm going to head nod. Board Member Schneider, what is your opinion on that?
I think we should leave it as it is because we have items on the first meeting of the month that, if we do it the second one, people aren't going to know and be able to make comments on those before action is taken.
Okay, I agree as well. So I believe it should read at every regular meeting of the board. Yeah, go ahead.
Only thing I would add is, I think the board reserves the right to add public comment to any board meeting if needed.
I understand. So the way I view policy is this is the standard, and then you have exceptions. And so I feel strongly that we should have public comment at every regular meeting. And it sounds like that Board Member Schneider and also Board Member Miller are interested in maintaining that. Board Member Miller, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, just a point of context. This came up when my first year on the board, and the point was made in our discussion that any citizen has a right to comment at the agenda item on any listed agenda item if they are acknowledged by the chair. And some of us on the board at the time wanted to include that language in there to clarify because that's just not common knowledge. it's the law, but that doesn't make it common knowledge. But there was the majority of the board at the time felt that they should not include that language in this policy. I would not be opposed to including that language in the policy just to clarify for people, like at a committee meeting, for example, you absolutely have a right to attend. And like, let's say, you know, we're talking about basketball and you want something to say about basketball. When it comes up on the agenda, you can ask to be acknowledged. Like, again, that's a law, right? Which is kind of like what you were saying. So I don't know how people feel about that. I can go either way on it, but I wanted to provide some context, like within the last 5 years, that was a discussion.
Thank you for that. I would not be opposed to including that, and it may be helpful because when we go down a little bit further, when we answer the question of how long, they know you have 3 minutes. If you are saying that it is the law that anyone can be acknowledged or anyone can have the right to speak on any agenda item as long as they're acknowledged by the chair, I would love to have some structure around that. Like you have a minute or you have a however long. Do you know, Board Member Miller, offhand, is that like state statute?
I think it just, Board Member Schneider might know better than I do. I just, like, it was brought up in that discussion and clarified by the attorney at the time. I don't know if it's an open meetings law thing, but
Okay.
I mean, I'm willing to do the research if you want.
I'd have to look. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but I do remember that that is a requirement.
Okay, so we're gonna make a note on this because I think that's important. One, I think it's important to clarify that in the policy. I think we should designate how much time a person has who is being acknowledged by the chair from the floor. So Ms. Shope, if you could put this on our to-do list. One, we need to see what the specific state statute is or if it's open meeting laws, that a citizen can be acknowledged from the floor at any agenda item if they are acknowledged by the chair, so that's at the chair's discretion. Two, I think we need to have a conversation about the time limit around that participation. So if we can put that in our to-do list. Is there anything else that we need to understand around the when question?
Sure, just one additional thought.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think too, I know public comment typically can go as long as we want it to go. Maybe, I know right now we're gonna look at the minute portion in the next section of the conversation, but could we also possibly even consider like a time frame for how long public comment can go? Or are we gonna just say it can go to however long we want it to go?
You mean public comment as a whole or
a
public
whole.
comment for an individual?
That's more as a whole, that's why I should have waited. But
Okay, we'll get to that with the put a pin in that one. Okay, so with our to-do list, Ms. Shope, we need to look at state statute or open meetings laws around the verbiage because we want to be consistent about citizens that who can be acknowledged from the floor by the chair. We also need to make a determination of if you are acknowledged, how long you get to speak. And then that scenario, let me just hold off until we read the language. Okay, in that same paragraph, one thing that concerns me, I'm fine with the strike through of the if other than Wisconsin. Everyone else fine with that? Okay, that's just asking for the address. I don't like requiring people to give their address at the microphone. I understand that we need to have it for the records. I'm great with them submitting it to the secretary or emailing it in. I do have concerns about making people state their address at the microphone. So I would love to hear feedback on that. Board Member Schneider, I'll start with you.
I think as long as we have it on their request to speak, so we have their actual address, that can be omitted from the microphone.
Okay. Board Member Miller, do you have any opinions on that?
I would agree. As long as you're being accessible, I don't think it makes a difference.
Okay. I do, to state your name in case there's like a follow-up question or clarification, you know how to address people. So actually we're into the third paragraph where it says the public comment card, first name, last name. No, sorry, I got my lines mixed up. So we're in that second line, just before the last comma, give the public comment card to the board secretary and approach the microphone to state first and last name, and that the 3 minutes, when you're yielding. But even if a person is coming to speak, I don't think they should have to state their address at the mic.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I see what you say. It says secretary and approach the microphone to state first and last name. And then it says home address, including city and state. So you're saying
To strike that.
okay.
Because in the paragraph before, they write it down and submit it to the secretary, or they email it in to the secretary if they want something read. So we'll have the information, because that may be a deterrent from people giving public comment if they have to publicly share their address.
Well, I think that section there is tied to if we change the top section.
How so?
So if the top section isn't changed to be more City of Beloit, then
No,
or,
this is
or citizens or
No, I think they're unrelated, because whoever we determine is able to come give public comment, we still want to capture the information of who they are and where they reside.
Sure.
Now, I'm fine with that, with us having that information, but it makes me uncomfortable to make them say their home address at the microphone to be recorded and put it on the World Wide Web. So I want us to retain the information, but I don't want them to have to share the information on microphone. Does that make sense?
Well, it's no different if they come and share. Well, I see what you're saying. I just feel like your reserve is because they've already shared it, or because you don't want everybody knowing their address.
Okay, so for example, if I'm a victim of domestic abuse, and I also have a concern that I want to speak publicly about at the school board meeting, you can have my home address, but I may not want to broadcast that on the microphone for everyone else to hear. You know what I mean? So we'll have the information, but I don't think they need to share it at the mic. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. That's fine.
Okay. Ms. Shope, did you get that edit? So we'll remove it from what people need to share at the mic?
I did. I just
Okay.
have one question.
Yep.
How strict do you want to be on the emails that we receive for an like a home address? Because a lot of times I don't get a home address, I just get the email address.
Okay, let me ask you this. Why do we collect the home address?
I believe that it's something that is required for the record, for the public record, which means in the minutes.
Okay.
But I can't swear to that. It might just be something
Let's put that on our
always been
to-do
done.
list. So
Okay.
step one, find out why we collect the address, because that will inform if we need it for the emails as well. Because you read those just as if they are public comment that are being read out loud. But then you brought up a good point. Those addresses go in the minutes that everyone can then see.
They won't see it if they want.
So well, let's check and see if there's a legal obligation there, or if we can just list people's names, like Amy Levy came to speak, and not include my address in the minutes. Ms. Miller, you had your hand up.
Yes, I apologize for skipping around, but what I just heard you say made me think of something. If we were to change a residence to a residency requirement, and first of all, nothing is stopping me from saying my name is, Marge Simpson, and I live at 742 Evergreen Terrace. And so are we carding people? And if so, are we de facto excluding people who aren't able to access legal forms of ID, people who have different documentation status? How are, it just, again, I just want to iterate my point about barriers. That's another avenue that didn't even occur to me until you just made that comment about
Right.
domestic abuse issue. So I just wanted to, like, if we could add that to our list of items to consider as a full board.
Ms. Shope, if you can also look if there is any legal requirement to verify the information that is being shared, or if it's the honor system. Very good point, committee members. All right, we still need to address the how long. In that last sentence, in the third paragraph, it says an individual may speak on behalf of a group, however, no more than the proposed language is one other person may yield his, her, their time to any one speaker. I'm actually fine with that. Well, I'm sorry, I will go last. Board Member Schneider, how do you feel about the proposed change?
It's typically pretty rare that we have two people yielding time to individuals. So I would like to leave it as it is.
Okay. Board Member Miller?
I would say in the interest of accessibility, I would like to leave it as is. Unfortunately for everybody around me, I speak very quickly, so I don't have this issue, but other people have, like, you know, everybody has like different manners of speech. I mean, I understand that we already have like the interpretation piece that gets double time, but everybody's different. So I guess I just don't see why we would put somebody in a less accessible space to offer comments. If there were like a speech, somebody might be nervous and be stuttering through. You know what I mean? I just feel like give people the space that they need to make their points. Like, why should somebody prepare, come to a meeting, be in the middle of a comment and get cut off and be like, well, no, you can only have one person yield your time if they could have had two? It just seems, again, unnecessarily restrictive, and it seems less accessible to me.
Okay. I'm actually fine with one other person. I think it is reasonable, in my opinion, that you have 6 minutes to share your perspective. But 2 committee members are fine with leaving it as is. 1 is not. In the spirit of,
Can I add something?
yeah, absolutely.
I think when you think about 6 or the 9, when one person is given, I know we're saying it's rare, but if one person is given almost a 10-minute conversation at a board meeting, then let's say multiple people want to talk. Now we're actually denying access because it's only 5 people if everybody gives up their time. And so to me, allowing the 6-minute opportunity actually gives more people the opportunity to share within let's just say an hour's time, or even if we want to do a 2-hour comment, or if we want to do a 3-hour public comment, you're going to get more people allowing the 6-minute opportunity versus the 9, and because people don't always stop at 9 if they go that long. They're always going a little over. And so I just think that there's the 6 minutes from an administration perspective is ample amount of time to deliver the conversation that you want to deliver. And no one is stopping you from continuing to having conversations with the rest of the board members. They can still come afterwards and have additional conversations, including with administration. And so I don't think it's like you can't talk or you can't have this amount of time, more so than it is, okay, you have the 6 minutes or give up the 1, moving it to 1, and then you can still have additional conversations with whomever you need to have it with.
So let's do this. We have some follow-up on this policy, so it's not going to leave the committee tonight. It will come back to committee at our July meeting, but I'm just giving everyone the heads up. When it does make it to the consent agenda for first reading, just out of, keeping everyone aware of changes and on the same page, I am going to pull this policy and we're going to review in an efficient manner with the board the highlights, which are who, when, and how long. So this will be a full board discussion as early as our second meeting in July. So just to give everyone a heads up, this will be pulled. We'll have an overview, and we'll just let the board decide. All right. Next, so we're starting with provisions of open meetings. just on that 3 lines, Board Member Schneider, any questions or edits?
I would have suggested adding, as long as board meetings, but also including committee meetings, as long as the person is recognized by the chair, but we've already talked about
Okay.
including that, and I think using the actual language would be good. I just looked in the open meeting law guide that's out, and it has nothing in there about giving the opportunity to do that. So I will look in statutes.
Okay,
But it's not
and-
in the guide.
Got it. We haven't gotten to under the portion that says norm of public comments. That's what we'll end on with this policy. So just for those 3 lines, Board Member Miller, do you have any questions or edits? Okay. My only question is that second sentence says, no person should interrupt the board meeting by speaking out from the floor. My question is, I'm fine with that being in there. I think it's appropriate if you haven't been acknowledged, but what happens if you do? I think we need to have just like we have, your mic's gonna be cut and the things. I'm not comfortable with leaving that in there if we don't say what will occur next. So, Dr. Garrison, what do we have the capacity to do to enforce that?
So Board President Levy typically reads in the norms for the public comment, and it specifically does states like.
But this is before we get to public comment. This speaks to, we have a person in the audience who's has not been acknowledged, and is shouting out from the floor, which I think we're all on the same page, like that is disruptive and not acceptable. But let's say that happens, what is our response?
So the board has, in my humble opinion, a lot of different options. We can ask that person to leave, right? That's-
Okay, we ask them to leave, they say no.
They say no. Then the board then has the opportunity to say, we can stop our conversation here as a board because in this case it's being unruly and could possibly be unsafe. And we can go into recess.
Okay, but we don't want to be in recess indefinitely. Do we have the capacity, and we can use this strategically to have security on hand that can escort someone out?
If it's we do have security, but that means we have to have someone here at every meeting possibly, based off of whatever.
Or we can call.
Or we can call ourselves.
Okay,
I see what you're getting at, but
let's put that on our to-do list. Let's give that some thought and revisit it, because I totally agree with the language as is, but if there's not a plan to deal with it if it occurs, then I think we're leaving a loose end.
if someone is ever being that unruly, we could easily, of course, we can go into recess, call for security, or in this case, police, and ask them to be removed from our meeting.
Okay, let's give that some thought and put it on our to-do list to make sure that that's addressed when this policy comes back. All right, we are now at the end of the policy with norms for public comment during board meetings. Anything under that header through the end of the policy that you have a question about or you need to make an edit to? Board Member Schneider.
I like the adage of holding things to obstruct others' views need to be removed or set on the side.
Okay.
That addition, I like that. No other changes.
Okay, Board Member Miller, same question.
I agree with Board Member Schneider. I did just have a question about
Yeah.
this information can also be captured on the public comment card. I just did, I mean, it's fine. I just didn't understand why that was there, I guess.
Okay.
So what was it?
Right at the bottom, the addition, this information can also be captured on the public comment card, especially since the card is being filled out and returned. I didn't,
Sure. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I thought was a possibility was to add this information to the card. So that means that people, when they actually are signing a card, they actually have to read the norms prior to even Board President Levy reading the norms. If they're signing the card, they can actually have the information in front of them.
okay.
And I wanted people to be able to read what he's oftentimes is reading. In this case, it'll be visible for people to see it.
I would recommend, and committee members, if you feel differently, please chime in. It may be a good practice to have it on the screens. That way everyone can see it, because just because it's on the card, I may not take the time to read the card. I just fill in the blanks and turn it in so I can go to the mic. If our intention is to make sure that everyone has access to this information, I think it would be a good practice to put the norms on the screen as they're being read, and even just leave them up during public comment.
So I think we should stay on the card and then say and screens.
If you are committed to having on a card, I am not opposed to it. Anyone
Most of the time,
else?
the people who are signing it are the people who's actually going to do the public comment.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So now you signing that you,
I am not opposed.
Yeah, if the back of the card that they're filling out is blank, I see nothing wrong with putting it on there. It's just one more chance where they have to be able to see what they're being asked to.
Perfection. Board Member Miller.
This is dorky, but like, is there a cost involved in reprinting cards? Like, I mean, if it's like
There's
an
the
easy
ink
thing,
involved.
like we're all out of cards. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, if it's not like a significant cost, I don't have a problem with it. You know what I mean? But I just wanted to raise that as like, sometimes like we get ahead of ourselves and it's like, oh wait, so just pitching that out there.
I think we should move to digital cards, but I was trying to hold that back, but I'm gonna let it lie. Dr. Garrison, if you are committed to having it on the card, it doesn't sound like the committee objects to that. Now, the issue that I do have, if we go back up to the top, just under the header, that second sentence, Robert's Rules of Order will be followed at all times. Okay, sorry everyone, this is not true. We do not follow Robert's Rules of Order at all times. I said it publicly, and that is okay, and that is okay. It is perfectly reasonable for boards to, for the most part, use Robert's Rules, but we have the flexibility, if it is an agreed norm of the group, to have times when we deviate. So because that is an acceptable practice, it makes me a little crazy every time I hear that, right? For example, if we were strictly following Robert's Rules of Order, once we have entered debate, once there's a motion and a second, you can only comment twice. You do not get a third comment. And that sometimes we do, but so it bothers me that it says Robert's Rules of Order will be followed at all times, because it is not accurate. Board Member Miller, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I have a question. This has come up before, and I seem to remember that if like when in doubt, or like if there is nothing in writing about what we're procedurally using, I think there's like, I don't know if it's a state law, but there's something in writing somewhere that says that we default to Robert's Rules. It might just be in our own policy. So I feel like we could eliminate that safely, and then it's like in the absence.
Can we have ice cream one more time?
Go for it, kiddo. If so, that's also a policy, but like I think like when there's not a specific procedure mentioned, it defaults to Robert's Rules. So that's something to look into. I think what I'm trying to say is I think we can safely eliminate that, because I think we have like that fallback already in policy.
Okay. Is anyone opposed to removing that sentence?
could we say maybe instead of removing it altogether, can we say Robert's Rules of Order will be the expectation for the meeting?
No, because here's the thing.
Right.
We follow a lot of what Robert says. We do not follow all of what Robert says. And I want to be very clear, every WASB training I've been to, they read it. That is perfectly fine to do. So I just, that sentence bothers me because it's not accurate.
I have no problem removing it, especially since this section is really used for public comments and not necessarily referring to the entire meeting.
Okay. Perfect. So Dr. Garrison, will you speak to the board president? And, wait till it's approved. We'll just notify the board president who reads this before meetings so that we are congruent.
That's when the policy is completely
Approved by the full board,
Right,
yes.
right. That we
Yep.
will remove that at that point. If it's approved.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
All right, so we have a short list that we're going to follow up on policy 187, but I think we've done good work. We're going to bounce back up to 2A. Ms. Shope, did you have any questions for us or any clarification? Are we good on the notes for it? Okay, perfect. All right, 2A brings us to policy 881. Board Member Schneider, any edits or questions?
I do not.
Same question, Committee Member Miller? All right, nope, I'm good with that as well. Remember that we approve in number groupings, so we're gonna go ahead to 881.1. Board Member Schneider, any questions or edits?
The only comment is that in the second paragraph, the end, I thought we struck this section that said, "In the activities of the building, for they have responsibilities that extend beyond ceremony," and ended it in "involved in a substantial way," period. I think that was the discussion we had last month.
Okay, so each building level organization, could you reread that, please?
Okay, the sentence would now read, "Each of the building level organizations should be involved in a substantial way," period.
Okay. Board Member Miller, are you opposed to that?
Not at all.
All right, perfect. So Ms. Shope will end the sentence there. Let me just cross that out. All right, Board Member Miller, any questions or edits for 881.1?
Yeah, I have like some nitpicky stuff. So I'm like in favor of an Oxford comma after the word state in the first sentence. So I don't really care if we do it or not, but I just need to like bring that up.
No, say that again after,
The word state.
okay, so before
where
the
there's a
and.
Yeah, between state
All
and
right,
and.
Ms.
That'd be
Shope,
cool.
we're gonna go ahead and insert an Oxford comma there.
That's going to be like my thing. I apologize for
You're
that,
okay.
but it's just more clear, I don't know, like whatever. But also in the last paragraph, so I had another comment, but Board Member Schneider just took care of it for me, so thank you. And then paragraph 3, just for continuity purposes, the rest of the policy language refers to it's like parent-teacher organizations, and I noticed in that last paragraph it's like parent-teacher or family something organizations. If we could just put like parent-teacher organizations in there for continuity, I think that's important. And then also the
Hold
last
on, well, let
line
me
was a
pause
little
right there. So it
confusing.
says parent, teacher, or family school organization. So the organization goes with both.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. I just wanted to bring it up because it goes with both the whole time, but the whole other time in the policy, if they have the word there. So I just didn't know if that was important or not. So I just wanted to bring it up. I don't really feel strongly about it, to be
Okay.
honest. So I'm good skipping it. The last line, so I just have my notes in front of me, and I'm not looking at the policy. I can switch screens really quick, but I wrote in my notes. It seems a little bit more clear to change the language to like shall operate with financial independence from the district. There's something grammatically like frustrating to me about the way it's currently written. Oh, thanks, Ms. Shope. Here, let me just bounce back. And so like right now it's kind of like this whole thing about shall operate financially independent of the district. Like, I don't know. I just felt like it was more clear to say shall operate with financial independence from the district, but I also don't feel strongly one way or the other. I just wanted to bring it up to consider.
Okay, I am fine with that. I have your notes pulled up, so if I am reading them correctly, it'll say family school organization shall operate with financial independence from the district instead of. Okay. So Ms. Shope will change the of to from, please. Thank you. My only question is in that second paragraph, the second line, starting the previous line, parent-teacher organizations and or a family school organization. I don't think we need the and because a building wouldn't have both unless there's something I'm missing. I'm going to take the silence to see. Okay, so if we could strike that and it'll be one of the two, not both. All right. Yep. So in that second paragraph, towards the end of the first line, school-based parent-teacher organizations or a family school organization, because you wouldn't have a PTO and a family school organization. You wouldn't have both in one building. Okay. So we'll strike the and just have or.
In the first paragraph. I see or here.
In the second paragraph right here. Second paragraph, second line, organization, it now says and or, yeah. All right, so that brings us to policy 881.1, Rule 1. Board Member Schneider, any edits or questions?
I do not.
All right, I am looking at your notes, Board Member Miller. Thank you for submitting those, and you're shaking your head, so nothing new. My only question, that second bullet point, assist the unit organization in carrying out unit functions on the board level. Does anyone oppose to us dropping the word unit and just saying assist the organization in carrying out functions? And if we could change that on to at the building level.
That sounds great.
Sounds good.
Okay. Ms. Shope, did you get that? All right. So that will bring us to policy 881.3. Board Member Schneider, any edits or questions?
In the last paragraph, the suggestion was changed from no person will be allowed to recruit students to no clergy or religious organization will be allowed to.
Could be a G in clergy.
Yep. That could eliminate other people who are not clergy or affiliated with a religious organization.
From
It
doing
would
that
still allow
activity.
them to be allowed to recruit students for a religious purpose.
I have the same things in my note, if we could just go back to no person, because that covers everyone. No, I understand that, but I'm not a member of the clergy, and let's say I wasn't affiliated with a religious organization, but under this policy, if you just limit it to clergy or religious organization, I could still recruit people for a religious purpose as an individual. Any other edits or questions, Board Member Schneider?
No.
All right. Do you want me to read your notes, Board Member Miller, for this policy?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, there's a note in there for Dr. Garrettson just for consideration.
No, the one, but
another
I wasn't
time.
gonna
I
read
don't
that
think
one.
we
The
need to
one
open that.
before?
Yeah, which, I mean, you can. But yeah, just like kind of, yeah, go for it.
Okay. So the note that Board Member Miller submitted is change the name to Relations with Churches or Other Institutions of Faith, parentheses, or religious organizations. And then just the note that it should be expanded due to the language about accommodating days off for religious holidays. Most school days already honor Christian/church holidays, but do not necessarily align with religious holidays affiliated with temples, mosques, synagogues, etc. So just to go back, the current title is Relations with Church, and the proposed change is Relations with Churches or Other Institutions of Faith, or religious organizations.
I
you
just
want-
meant that, like, I'm not married to that language, just like whatever language folks want. I just think we need to expand that out because, like if somebody asks, like, oh, hey, I want this day off. Oh, well, I mean, if somebody wanted to be a stickler about it, you say, well, it's not affiliated with the church. So, I just, want to be inclusive, I guess.
No, and how do we feel about relations with institutions of faith? Because I think that covers churches, synagogues, mosques. It widens it. Is anyone opposed to changing the title from Relations with Churches to Relations with Institutions of Faith?
I would prefer it be organizations of faith.
Organizations of faith?
Correct.
Okay. Is anyone opposed to that? All right. So Ms. Shope,
That's perfect.
the proposed new title will be Relations with Organizations of Faith. All right. So did we decide on switching that back to no person? Is anyone opposed to that? Okay. All right, so that wraps up our 881 series number. Is there a motion to approve policies 881, 881.1, 881.1 Rule 1, and 881.3 to move on to the full board for first reading?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
881 has no revisions to it, so technically it wouldn't have to go anywhere.
Thank you. Is everyone okay with omitting 881? Thank you for that, because there are no changes. So what would go to the full board for first reading is 881.1, 881.1 Rule 1, 881.3.
That's fine.
Okay. Any additional discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, that motion passes unanimously. Dr. Gerson, do you need to head out? Okay. All right, that brings us to policy 890. Board Member Schneider, any questions or edits?
I was wondering if we want to add something about and may benefit students in the future. I know that there was a lot of work between buildings, especially the high schools and institutions of higher education, to look at getting students into the institutions or supporting them to get there, working with the institution to clarify what courses apply for different things.
Hold on one second. Dr. Garrison, are you fine with Mrs. Mortek coming up and taking your place? Come on up. All right, my apologies, because in my head, when I was planning for tonight, I should have done a better job of setting this up. So give me a mulligan.
Okay.
Do you want to come sit? So you can, yeah. All right, so you have to stand. What I think we should change structurally is when we're looking at policy 890 and policy 891, for me, there's some overlap there. For example, policy 890 says relations with educational agencies. And then policy 891, relations with other schools, school district, educational associations. But the whole other school districts is covered in the previous policy.
Right.
So let's talk about the structural changes potentially, and then we'll jump right back to what you just brought up. So what I think we should do with policy 890 is relations with other schools and districts, and just house all of that information there. And then for policy 891, relations with educational associations, and then we house that stuff there, so we're not jumping back and forth. Does anyone object to that?
No.
All right, okay. Now, with that framework in place, what I think we should remove from that first one, and then we'll go back to your point. So we're looking at policy 890, and the proposed new title for that, Ms. Shope, is relations with other schools and districts. In that second line, when it says, and other educational organizations, I want to strike that and just end that sentence with relationships with other schools, school districts, and colleges, because that portion is going to be taken care of in the
Right.
next policy. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
All right, with that being said, Board Member Schneider, take it away, take us back to your point.
Okay, then my point then would actually be part of,
The next policy?
well, it would be part of this one as we're looking at relationships with college, with institutions of higher education, be it a 2-year campus, a 4-year campus, a trade school, or so on, that it would be good for the district, as well as working with other school districts, to also look at those higher education ones, not just for student achievement with the framework for statutes, regulations, and board policy, but to work out ways that the courses that they're taking in high school can apply to that higher education or training program, which kind of steps outside of what
Of
this
student
policy says.
achievement?
But that's looking at, to me, is looking at student achievement while they're in high school. But so if we look at we have some that are dual credit courses, but it could be increasing some of those, or working with Blackhawk Tech to say, this course, we want to be accepted as credit under this program at Blackhawk Tech. So again, working on more of those things kind of steps outside of what's here.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because I didn't see it that way. I didn't, in my mind, student achievement wasn't just limited to while you were in high school. It was while you're a student, so student achievement. But if you feel differently, what do you think what is your proposed language change? Do you want to give that some thought for a second?
Okay. Let me give it some thought.
Think about that. Board Member Miller, did you have any additional edits or questions for policy 890?
Yeah.
No, although that was very interesting. Thank you, Board Member Schneider. I just think there should be a comma after regulations and before and in the established statutes, regulations, comma, and board policy.
All right, Ms. Shope, if we could add an Oxford comma after regulations. And then my question is about that. So we have statutes, regulations, and board policy. Is the intention that regulations means administrative regulations?
So this is a standard, like you'll see this relations with educational agencies and a lot of other policies as well. So this is very standard to us working with other organizations. So when I see regulations, I do think sometimes that is more administration, but it's not excluding like state regulations.
So help me out. Okay, because when I read it, I thought the state stuff was captured under statutes, like state statutes. And in my mind, regulations, the note I put is this admin regs. And for anyone playing at home that's not familiar with admin regs, the way that they are supposed to work in a district, emphasis on supposed to work, is that we have the policy, but then making the policy practical. So like the board says that everybody needs to do this thing, and then administrative regs explains how to do the thing that the board says we have to do. So it's kind of like the how-to, and the policy is the what. But if you're saying regulations, that doesn't refer to administrative regulations, which we just described. Can you please clarify for me what it is if it's not that?
I think to me, it's a little bit of both, because we have to follow state statutes. We have to also look at what we're doing inside of the school district, which is regulations.
But is that administrative regulations, or is it something that I'm not aware of?
That'll be administrative regulations.
Okay.
Is that what, I'm sorry, was that what your question was?
Yep, that was my
Oh, I'm
question.
sorry.
Can we specify, so if there are other people out there like me that aren't sure what?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So it will read,
Just remember, administrative regulations follow state statutes.
Absolutely, everything should be in line.
Correct. So-
Right. So it's established by, let's just put state statutes. Let's just be clear. So state statutes, administrative regulations,
And board policy.
board policy.
Correct.
And I would even reverse that. So state statutes, board policy, and administrative regulations.
That's fine.
All right.
I agree with that.
Does anyone oppose to that?
No.
All right. Anything else from 890 before we move to 891?
Just to what I was saying
Yep.
before, Ms. Mortek gave me some great wording for that, and just after that
Teamwork.
last line, student achievement and expanding learning opportunities.
Okay. Anyone opposed? Ms. Shope, did you get it?
After student achievement, we're putting and expanding learning opportunities.
Correct.
Expanding or expanded? Expanding?
Expanding, yeah.
Ing. All right, we're good. Okay, so, and let's look at 891 just to make sure we're good with 890 before we go ahead and move those on. So policy 891, so the proposed change for the title is Relations with Educational Associations. Board Member Schneider, any edits or questions?
Just to complete the name of North Central Association, their full name is North Central Association of Colleges and Schools.
All right. And then my question on that is, are we currently active?
I'll be honest with you, I know we participate with WASB,
Yep.
and I know we have affiliation with NASB, North Central. I asked that question. It's so funny that you asked that question. I don't think we do. Yeah, and it's funny. Me and Shoke was just talking about that before with the meeting. I
Okay.
was like, I don't know if we really are associated with North Central Association.
Would anyone be opposed to removing that? Because we know we're
covered.
current with NASB and WASB. Board Member Schneider, do you have any objections to it? Okay. Board Member Miller?
I would like to look.
Sounds good.
Okay.
You said so, Ms. Morta. You think we don't at all?
I do not that I'm aware of, but
I think we should.
I didn't look into it,
Yeah,
so
I didn't-
perhaps we should just look into it to double check, and then we can get back.
I agree.
Okay.
I would like to check. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Ms. Shope, can you put that on our to-do list? That if we are current, we will change it to North Central Association of Colleges and Schools. Is that accurate? All right. If we are not current, then we will strike that portion. Thank you so much. All right. Board Member Miller, any edits or questions for policy 891?
I don't think so. Let me just double check. Nope, 891, I'm good.
Okay, and because we changed the title and kind of compartmentalize where we're putting information, that first sentence I think should read, the Board of Education encourages a positive relationship and membership of the district in recognized educational associations. Yep, the Board of Education encourages a positive relationship and membership of the district in recognized educational associations. Is anyone opposed to that change?
No.
All right. So that brings us to policy 891.1. Board Member Schneider, any changes?
Pardon the
No.
interruption.
Yep, go ahead.
Well, can you reiterate what the new title is supposed
Yeah,
to be? So I have
absolutely.
it correct.
891 should read Relations with Educational Associations.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. All right, 891.1. Board Member Schneider, any edits or questions?
No.
Okay. Board Member Miller, same question.
Yeah, I just am curious about like just the language around CISA. Like, do we need an "and" outside CISA?
So what I proposed is that we have the district may participate in programs and services offered by any CISA. I think that would kind of clear it up and make it simple. And CISA Cooperative Educational Service Agency. Is everyone okay with that? Any CISA?
That works really well.
All right,
Yeah.
and then the other change I had is in that third line at the end. So it'll read programs and services that may be considered include. So instead of programs and services that may be considered would logically include, if we could take out the would logically and just assume everyone's being logical. And thank you. Appreciate it. And then, Mrs. Mortek, thank you for giggling. I appreciate that too. All right, the last clause, we have so much fun at policy. Programs and services offered through, if we could just put CISAs, or any CISA, we'll be consistent, any CISA. All right, anyone opposed to those changes?
No.
All right, perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
So we're taking out the or outside CISA based on offering of services and needs. That's coming out.
Yep.
It's gonna say
Programs and services offered by any CISA. And we'll still spell it out so people know spell it out and then put CISA in parentheses. And then at the very end, programs or services offered through any CISA. Yep, perfect. All right, that brings us to 891.2. Board Member Schneider, any edits or changes?
No.
Board Member Miller, same question.
All good here.
All right, so that brings us to the end of the 891s, and we also need to include 890. Ms. Shope, let's see if I can get this right. Is there a motion to move to the full board for first reading policy 890, policy 891, policy 891.1. That's it, because we didn't make changes to 891.2. Thanks.
So moved with
With edits.
the edit for 891.
I think all of them have edits.
Right.
Yeah,
But
okay.
891, there's that one section that we're not sure about, that if we're involved in the North Central Association, we will
Oh,
change the
no,
title, and
Ms.
if
Shope,
not, we will remove that.
you praised me too soon. I didn't do that right. All right, so, all right, let me poll the committee. We typically move things forward as a group. Do we want to hold the group back until we get information on that? Yeah, let's do that. Let's be
Let's hold it,
consistent.
yep.
All right, so,
Okay, otherwise, my understanding was I'm striking it unless we're still active in it. So if we find out before the board meeting.
okay, is everyone fine
I'm
with
fine
that?
with that.
All right, I trust that that will happen. Okay, so perfect, because we already had a second for the motion. We don't have to vote anything down. All minds clear. Just to recap, that's going to be policies 890, 891, 891.1, and that's it. All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I
Motion passes unanimously. All right, we're on a roll. That brings us to 892.1. Board Member Schneider, any edits or questions?
I have no edits or questions on this policy, but just reading it, haven't looked further, but do we have a policy that looks at student work experiences and internships? I mean, students of the school district? Okay, we do, okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, no
Michelle
problem.
said that there is, so I'm just making sure we didn't miss it, so.
Can we
Okay.
get that cross-referenced at the bottom? Perfect. All right, Board Member Miller, any edits or questions on policy 892.1?
no, I'm good.
Okay. I don't have any as well. We will do the cross-reference there.
If you're okay with it, I don't feel it needs to move forward to just add a cross-reference.
I'm fine with that. Anyone oppose? Okay. All right, so that takes care of 892.1, which brings us to, look at that, our final policy for the night, 893. Board Member Schneider, any questions or edits?
No questions or edits.
Okay, Board Member Miller, same question.
I'm good to go.
My only question is, and for anyone playing at home, the title is Relations with Educational Researchers. Ms. Moratek, do you know, how are parents notified, parents or guardians, that research is taking place?
I need to look into that because so far since I have been here, there's been a couple of ones that have come forward, but they didn't involve students, they involved staff.
Okay.
And the other piece of this, and I don't know if it is appropriate in the policy or not, but just from former experiences, like in my former districts, they were much larger, right? Milwaukee and Madison is where I came from. And so there was a lot of research constantly being proposed. And so I was on a committee. Here, since I've been here, it's only been a couple. It's usually people's like dissertation projects. But there was a timeline. So for example, when people can submit things and when they can't. And I don't know if that's appropriate or not for a smaller district here. And then the other piece of that is like, who's maintaining the records of the research? So right now we have an internal folder, but there isn't like this said named person in the policy. So you have the superintendent or the designee that's stated in the policy, but there isn't like this formal place that it's expected to
live.
To live. Do you see what I mean?
Yep.
And I don't know if you'd want an archive of that, right? As superintendents or the designees myself come and go out of the district, is there this sort of permanent place in which we want to hold research that's been done in the district or proposals that have been done in the district.
And then you bring up a good point, because whose research is that? If someone's coming in to do research, is that our research? Is that their research? Is that shared information?
Yeah, and so there's different things that you go through. And so we have had people, like an outside entity that wanted to pull research, and then we make sure that they're following the FERPA rights, and then we have a agreement that they assign. So like, let's say in our integrated technology pieces, they might want to pull research. Well, we have an agreement that they have to sign so that they're confidential, they're following FERPA, like all those types of pieces. So that's a different kind of research versus like a grad student that's coming to me and saying, hey, I want to do my doctoral dissertation on X. I'm submitting that. Do I have permission to do this?
Okay. I would recommend we put a pin in this. We get more information and we bring this
Okay.
one back in July. We want to know who owns the research, if it's ours, theirs, or ours. So Ms. Shope, if you could put that in the to-dos. And then where is the research housed, if that's something that we should be archiving. I think it's
Can
important.
I just add real quick?
Please,
I'm
sir.
sorry. Yes, typically the research, so typically it has to also go through IRB, Institutional Review Board, and in most of the dissertation work, the IRB or the institution lays out who the research is for and how it can be used. And so typically we'll get all that information in the IRB of the research. And so let's say we agree to do the work or to work with someone who wants to do the research. In the IRB, Institutional Review Board, they'll say to us, oh, yes, you have access to the research. The research actually belongs to, let's just say, the Madison University. But we have access to the research, and we can use it however we want to use it because we were a part of the actual research. And so the IRB will lay out exactly who has access to it, how it's to be used, and X, Y, and Z. And so typically you will see that in the IRB if we agree to participate in the research.
Yeah,
That
I
makes
think
sense?
there's.
And where it's typically housed at, for me, I've seen it housed in the central office, or in this case, the office of the superintendent, because there's a lot of research that'll come through, and typically it'll come through myself, or in this case, Mrs. Mortek. For the most part, it's through teaching and learning. I said for the most part. I've seen some that's out of pupil services, and I've seen some that's attached to special ed as well. But we can house it out of my office. That's where it should be housed because the request comes to the school district superintendent.
And I hope
So that's what I would suggest of where it should be housed at.
Okay. I just think we should cover that in policy so all the things that you said are clear, and hopefully housing is electronic, like you don't have a file in the office.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's given to us on a zip drive. Sometimes it's given to us in a real file, because it's like a dissertation. It just really depends on how they decide they want to give us the information. Now, yes, back in the day it was pencil paper, but now most of it is like a zip drive.
Perfect. So if
Drive.
we could put a pin in policy 893, and then and we don't want to get too far in the weeds because that's not the role of policy, but just outline the conversation that we just had so it's clear what's where. And then the other thing I would like to add to our to-do list is how are parents notified? I think that should be clear in policy as well. All right.
Agreed.
Oh, sorry. Did you have something else, Dr. Garrison? Okay. So
Research
892.1, there are no changes, and 893 is going to come back once we have more information. Ms. Shope, thank you for keeping that running to-do list. If you could send that out to committee members, so just to refresh our memories for the next meeting, so we're not reinventing the wheel. And then if you could just put a quick list of the policies that are on this month's agenda, kind of what happened to each of them. Like these went to the full board, these are being held back, these had no changes, so they're not going anywhere. That would be super helpful. You are nodding your head yes, so thank you.
Yes, my only question,
This one. The 892.1, the only one we were going to have is add the cross-reference added to the sheet.
then we don't need to approve it.
Then
We're just
that's
gonna,
right, we don't
yep,
need to approve
yep, we're gonna let it lie.
That's right.
Okay. Ms. Shope, you said something?
Yeah, I said I have a question.
Yes,
When we
please.
bring back 893,
Yep.
are 892.2 and 1 that didn't have any changes, okay not to come back with it?
Yeah, yes, because they are a different number grouping.
Okay.
Those are, yep, 891, 892. This is a
Okay.
standalone 893. Yep.
Just
Thank
wanted
you.
to double check. Thank
No, I
you.
appreciate that. Well, look at us. It is 6:44, and we find ourselves at the end of the agenda. Our next meeting date is going to be Wednesday, July 5th at 5:30, right here in Colac. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second?
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone.